Hi everybody! I'm so excited that you decided to take the journey that is yoga. It is so much more than just a physical practice of asana, of different poses. It's an entire way of being. There's 8 limbs in Patanjali's teachings, and all of them contribute to allowing you to be and show up as your full divine self that each one of us is. So asanas themselves, when we focus on the physical practice of yoga, alignment is an incredibly important piece. Quite often when you attend classes, you don't get a lot of the alignment teachings, and so we find ourselves holding poses inaccurately, which can actually cause harm to the body instead of good. And so it's incredibly important that we learn correct alignment so that we can hold those poses for longer and we can sit naturally while we strengthen and stretch the body instead of creating tension and dis-ease within the body. So I'm going to start today with just a few simple seated poses to talk about what's the best way to stay in alignment when we're sitting in these during a practice. So let's just start with a comfortable seated position. So right now I'm in a half lotus pose. If this doesn't feel comfortable for you, there are many other options. You can sit with one leg in front of the other like this. You can sit with the legs crossed. If you have the space in the body, you can even sit in a full lotus pose. However, since most of you guys are beginners, I'm going to guess that this is not something that the body's ready to do quite yet. So wherever you are, whatever feels right for you, a really important thing to recognize when you first begin your yoga practice is the importance of keeping the hips and the sit bones above the knees if you can. So I have relatively open hips, so my knees come pretty close to the earth. But this took years of practice. So for most of you, if you're going to be seated for an extended period of time, it's really good to lift those sit bones up. So you can take a block, you can take a blanket, you can take a bolster, you can take a pillow, whatever it is, and put it under those sit bones so that you're nice and lifted and those knees naturally fall down towards the earth. So now that we have this nice lifted extension here, we're going to come and we're going to work on the spine. So the next inhale, we're going to inhale, lift the spine up nice and tall. You could should actually, not to shit on you, but should actually feel yourself growing taller as you inhale that spine up. The next inhale is going to inhale those shoulders up. The exhale is going to roll them down the back. And by doing this, we're going to bring an opening across the heart and across the chest. A beautiful opening that allows the love to flow naturally and freely within us and between each other. These hands can come to rest on the knees or the thighs. It really depends on the length of your arms. So if this feels strenuous for you, we don't want to do that. Pull them back a little bit. It is taught that when those palms are facing down, we're really focused on grounding and rooting our energies. So if you're feeling a little anxious or nervous, or you have a lot of movement or worries in the body, put those palms down, really ground into the earth below you, really root your energy, calm your energy, and bring yourself into the present moment. On the other hand, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling sleepy, if that energy is really low, do the opposite. Rotate those palms facing up and pull that divine energy into your being to energize you. So wherever those hands are, make sure that we didn't lose focus on that spine, that we're still lifting up nice and tall. And when we think about that extension in the spine, I want you to imagine it extending from the sit bones all the way up to the crown of the head. So we're lifting up here. We're not tucking down. We're not rolling back. We're nice and extended. This chin should actually be parallel with the earth below you. So here we are, we're nice and rooted in our sit bones. We have a beautiful extended spine. Those shoulders are open. That heart is allowed to flow freely. We have those hands either calling in or grounding the energy within ourselves. And that chin's parallel to the earth below us as the top of the head, the crown of the head rises up towards the sky. So this is a beautiful, correct posture to sit in. So if you find yourself practicing meditation or holding a seated pose for a pranayama or breath work, it's really important to focus on these key pieces of alignment while you do that. So let's close our eyes for a moment and let's breathe here. Another thing to become aware of when we're breathing is, where is the breath coming into? Naturally, since we live in a very fast-paced, quick-moving society, we tend to take shorter breaths. And when we take short breaths, quite often we find that those are forming inside of the lungs. When we're in our yoga practice, more than we want to focus on bringing the breath into the lungs, we want to focus on bringing the breath into the diaphragms. So go ahead and open your eyes. And if you look at my body, when I breathe into my lungs, you'll notice that the shoulders rise. So as the lungs expand out, it lifts the shoulders up and back down. And that's a really great way to tell if you're breathing into the lungs or if you're breathing into the diaphragm, because the lungs are always going to make movement occur within the body. So let's do that. Let's do a few breaths in the lungs and see how that feels. Now let's begin to focus that breath down into the diaphragm, so really low into the belly here. So on that inhale, you're going to inhale and you're going to imagine that breath coming past the lungs, and then it's going to expand out right here. And then exhale, the stomach comes back in. That inhale is pulling it down, expanding the belly. Exhale is pulling it in. So if you look at my shoulders when I'm breathing into the diaphragm, they're still, right? So diaphragm breathing only moves the stomach in and out, which allows the remainder of the body to stay still, to stay present. Specifically in Hatha yoga, which is actually my preferred style that I learned when I was living in India, it's incredibly important to find stillness within each of your poses, which is very different than vinyasa, which are a lot of the classes I do have on my page as well. Vinyasa is a lot more cardio, we're moving quickly, when Hatha is really grounding and rooting into the present moment. So when you first begin to learn how to breathe into the diaphragm, it's a bit tricky because you're reteaching your body how to breathe. So I want you to just throughout your day practice this. Practice breathing into the diaphragm, letting the stomach expand, and exhale, allowing it to release, and trying to find stillness in the upper body as you bring the breath beyond the lungs into the stomach. So let's go ahead and move on. Let's take the block from underneath our sit bone and come back down onto the earth. And we're going to take and we're going to extend those legs out long in front of us. So we're coming into Dandasana, or staff pose here. So we're going to start by making sure those sit bones are really rooted. So I actually, in all my classes, have my students physically go ahead and remove that excess flesh, especially women. If you've got more meat back there on the booty, you want those sit bones to root. Your base always has to be solid and steady for every pose that you move through. So as we feel those sit bones rooted into the earth, we're going to do the exact same thing that we did in our seated pose. We're going to inhale a tall spine. That next inhale is going to inhale shoulders up. The exhale is going to roll them down the back. So no matter where you are, we always want to bring length into our spine. So if you take a look at my feet are nice and flexed here. You have a choice when you sit in this pose. You can have the feet hip width distance, or you can bring them together. It stretches a little bit differently. Preferably for myself, I like a little bit of space between the feet, but that's really up to you. So with this beautiful extended spine, the next thing we do on an inhale is we're going to inhale those arms up. And as we inhale the arms up, we're going to use them to lift that spine even a little bit taller here. And then the next exhale, we're going to exhale and we're going to fold forward. And we're going to fold and use these arms to extend the arms, to extend the body in front of us. So depending on the flexibility you have in the legs is going to determine how low you can go. So we're going to release the hands down. For some of you guys, that might mean you're just on the shins. Some of you guys might be up here on the knees or on the thighs. Really important here is the straight back. So we're never rounding down to get deeper. We're never going to sacrifice one part of the body for another. We always want that long extended spine, with the exception of moving through cat and cow and a few similar poses like that. So with this beautiful extension in the spine, wherever those arms are, we're going to keep those key things we started with. So we're going to keep the sit bones rooted. We're going to keep these feet nice and flexed. We're going to keep that spine extended. We're going to keep those shoulders rolled open. And we're going to keep that heart pulling forward. If you have the space in your legs to come down nice and low, it's important to notice what part of your body is touching first, because that's going to tell you if you are rounding in the back or if you're staying extended. So I'm going to turn to the side so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So with the feet nice and flexed, nice and rooted here. If we're extending forward, the first thing that should touch with the straight spine is the stomach, then the chest. And if you have the space, then the forehead. So we're never rounding like this. The forehead should never come down with space between the stomach and the chest. Stomach, chest, and then the forehead. So wherever, if you're on those feet, there's a few options here that you can do. So if you come to the outer edges of the feet, you're going to notice and kind of gently pull here. You're going to notice how that stretch is different than if you were on the tops of the feet. So when I'm in this pose, if I'm here for a little bit, I like to play with both ways. So I'll hold my feet on the side for a little bit, breathe into my legs like this. And then maybe I'll come to the tops of the feet, pull those toes down, breathe in the hamstrings here. Notice where your breath is. Are you still focused on breathing into the diaphragm, or have you moved back up into the lungs? And be gentle with yourself as you learn this new practice. It's exactly that. It is a practice. It's not a performance. It's not a competition. It's something that the more time you spend, the better at it you will get. The more you'll begin to understand and actually feel into the body and what the body needs and what alignment is correct for you. So as we make our way out of this pose, before you do anything, the most important thing to do is engage the core. If we don't engage the core, we use the back to lift, and that can actually cause straining in the back. But if we engage the core is going to support the lumbar, the lower spine here, as we lift up. So first I want you to extend those arms out long. With that engaged core on an inhale, use that core to inhale, lift you back up. And on my exhales, I like to exhale the hands down through the heart center and feel into the body. So feel the sensations, feel the movement, feel the energy. And you pull all of that down into the heart. Wonderful. Release those hands. And we're going to make our way into one more seated pose. So I'm going to come to face you once again. We're going to come into Batakunasana here. So we're going to bring the soles of the feet to touch. And we're going to bring them as close as it feels comfortable in your body. So depending on the space that you have in your hips, your knees might be up here, they might be in the middle, they might be coming down towards the mat. Again, it's a practice, so the more that you do this, the easier, and not necessarily easier, but the more flexibility you're going to find in your body. So we find ourselves in another seated pose. So every time we're in a seated pose, it's those same things to think about. Make sure those sit bones are nice and rooted. On those inhales, we lift our spine up nice and tall. Even here, we're going to inhale, shoulders up. Exhale, roll them down the back. So we create that nice open chest, that beautiful open heart. So we have lots of space here. The spine is extending. We're lifting all the way through the crown of the head so that chin is still parallel with the earth here. Those fingers can come and they can wrap around the feet if you want. We're going to keep that nice extended spine. And for some of you guys, this might be enough to stay right here. If you want to go deeper, as always, we're going to lead with the heart. And so on an exhale, can lead with the heart as we extend forward, and that spine stays long. So again, we're not rounding to come down here. We're nice and extended as we come forward. Some people like to take the elbows to the insides of the thighs or never the knees. You never want to push on a joint. So if you want to come to the inside of the thighs, you can push in a little deeper, but really be gentle, never too forceful with the body. If you find a lot of space in the hips, another option is to actually open those feet up like a book here, and you can come in a little bit deeper. Wherever you are, I really want you to make sure that that spine is still extended here. So it's nice and long. We're breathing nice and deep. Some people like to extend those arms out in front. It lets you kind of pull in a little bit deeper. So if that feels like a good option for you, feel free to do that as well. Again, the key piece in this is really that nice straight spine. And whatever arm variation you wish to choose is really up to you. So you can release the neck if you want, as long as you don't round the spine to do that. And let's breathe into these hips here for a few moments. Nice steady breaths. Remembering to bring that breath nice and low into that diaphragm like we practiced at the start of this video. Make sure that breath is staying nice and steady and long. That breath is going to keep you in the present moment. So if you find the mind wandering as you stay in these poses, do your best to just release those thoughts without judgment or attachment. If they flow in quickly, let them flow out just as quickly as they came. And bring the awareness back to the breath. And allow that breath to keep you in the moment, to keep you present. You can even focus on bringing that breath into the hips or in any place of the body that you feel a little tightness, you feel a little holding, a little resistance taking place. We'll be here for a few more breaths. One more breath here. And just like we did in our forward fold in that seated pose, we are going to engage the core, and that core is what's going to lift us up. So when you're ready with a nice engaged core on an inhale, you're going to inhale and you're going to lift that spine up. Beautiful. To support the body, you can take the hands to the outsides of the knees and really lift those knees up nice and tall here. Walk the feet out a little bit, set the hands on the mat, and let those knees fall side to side. So this is typically, we call this a windshield wiper with those knees. So let them fall side to side, release the hips, release the spine here. Let's hold them on the left side here for a breath. And then let's inhale them up and over to the right. Stay here for a breath. Beautiful. If you need to do a couple more side to side, feel free. And then we're going to come back to a comfortable seat for just a moment. And just like we started, we're going to talk through it one more time. So we're going to root those sit bones, remove that excess flesh here. Really inhale, lift that spine up nice and tall. Next inhale, pulls those shoulders up, down the back, opening, crest the chest and the heart. We're extending all the way through the crown of the head. That chin is parallel with the earth below you. So you'll notice the upper body stays very similar in many of these poses, whether we're here in a seated pose, whether in staff pose with the extended legs, whether we're moving into a Batakunasana. Many of the poses I'm going to teach you guys are going to focus on this very similar alignment of creating expansion and extension in the upper body. So it was a pleasure to be able to talk through some of these poses with you guys and practice with you. I'm going to keep making more of these beginner posture-focused videos, working a lot on alignment to make sure that you can set yourself up for success as you develop your practice. It's an honor to be with you. Namaste.